Hello and a very warm welcome. Let's get started. You're watching Gravitas. Tonight on Gravitas, our top focus, Israel has struck Lebanon's capital for the first time since the Trump-brokered ceasefire came into effect. In fact, Hezbollah also continues to fire drones at Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. We are telling you what all of this means for the fragile truce. 1 year since India launched Operation Sindhur targeting terror hubs in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, we get you a special report coming up. Also telling you all about Russia's latest threat as the Russia-Ukraine war sees a dangerous turn. All this and more coming up. Israel has taken the war straight into the heart of the Lebanese capital for the first time since the Trump-brokered ceasefire came into effect on the 17th of April. Israeli warplanes struck Beirut, targeting a top Hezbollah commander in a deadly attack that signals a major escalation in the conflict. Even as Israel intensifies its airstrikes, Hezbollah continues to fire drones at Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. The truce now appears to be hanging by a thread, basically, as the two sides expand their operations. A senior commander of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force was killed in the Israeli strike. The Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister confirmed the operation in a joint statement.
هيدي سنويتك عاق حقيقة، هيدي اللي بلزقها راسها الأرض، هيدي سنويتك عاق، هيدي اللي بلزقها البناية فوق الاستهداف.
Israeli warplanes targeted Beirut's southern suburbs, an area known as a Hezbollah stronghold, and reports say the strike hit an apartment where Radwan force leaders were holding a meeting. This force is reportedly Hezbollah's most capable and best trained combat unit. In fact, surveillance cameras in Beirut captured the moment the missile hit the building in the Lebanese capital. Take a look. The Israeli military later released footage of the strike and identified the Hezbollah commander as Ahmad Balot. The rescue team searched through the collapsed building after the attack as the residents gathered around the rubble.
We were sitting peacefully at night. I had arrived home to check on my family. We heard the sound of missiles, the strike. It was terrifying.
In an address, Netanyahu said, "No terrorist is immune," quote unquote.
Yesterday evening, we eliminated the commander of Hezbollah's Radwan force in the heart of Beirut. This was the same senior terrorist who led the plan to conquer the north.
Beirut had not faced Israeli attacks since the 8th of April, when large-scale airstrikes across Lebanon, remember, killed more than 350 people. Since the ceasefire, Israel has continued to strike targets primarily in southern Lebanon, while Hezbollah has responded with drone and rocket attacks on Israeli forces. Hezbollah has now released video footage claimed to show a drone attack on an Israeli glider control system in southern Lebanon. The drone appeared to bypass Israel's anti-UAV defenses before hitting its target. The Israeli military says an explosive drone also injured 4 soldiers in southern Lebanon, including one who suffered serious injuries. Israel also saying 17 soldiers and 2 civilians have been killed since fighting escalated. Lebanon's health ministry said Israeli attacks across southern and east Lebanon led to further fatalities. And in Lebanon's Saskayeh, 4 people were killed, 33 others injured after fresh Israeli strikes. Strikes were also reported on the town of Yater. Smoke billowed across the sky as Israeli jets struck the southern villages of Deir Sirian and Kafat Ibnit. Warplanes could be seen flying overhead while explosions rocked the area. Smoke also rose over Nabatea after another round of Israeli airstrikes targeted southern Lebanon. Israeli strikes on Lebanon have killed more than 2,700 people, remember, and displaced more than 1 million since the 2nd of March. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is saying it is investigating an Israeli soldier who was photographed reportedly smoking next to a statue of the Virgin Mary and placing a cigarette in the statue's mouth in southern Lebanon, allegedly. The image was reportedly taken in the Christian village of the Beir. Last month itself, another Israeli soldier was photographed striking a statue of Jesus with a sledgehammer in the same village, reportedly. The Israel Defense Forces saying they view the incident with utmost severity, saying the soldiers' actions do not represent the values of the Israeli military. One year ago today, India launched Operation Sindhur, a high-precision military response to the Pahalgam terror attack that killed 26 civilians. In just 88 hours, India targeted terror camps in an assertive security doctrine built on speed as well as precision. But a year on, according to the Indian government's latest assessment dossier accessed by WION, Pakistani terror groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Toiba are yet to recover from the Indian strikes. Take a look.
7th May 2025, a date that redefined India's counter-terror strategy. In the early hours, India launched Operation Sindhur, a tri-service military campaign targeting terror infrastructure across Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The operation was a direct response to the brutal and cowardly Pahalgam terror attack on the 22nd of April, which claimed the lives of 25 tourists and one local guide. India's Operation Sindhur was calculated and precise. 9 terror hubs were targeted with pinpoint accuracy, aimed at dismantling the networks of Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen, while ensuring minimal civilian damage. Among the key targets were Jaish-e-Mohammed's headquarters in Bahawalpur, Lashkar-e-Taiba facilities in Muridke and Muzaffarabad, and multiple Hizbul Mujahideen locations. India also eliminated several high-value terror operatives, including those linked to the IC-814 hijacking and the Pulwama terror attack. But Operation Sindhur did not stop at terror camps. For the first time, India struck multiple Pakistani air bases and military installations, including Chaklala, Rafiki, Noor Khan and Rahim Yar Khan. The Indian forces had sent a loud message that terror and safe havens will no longer be tolerated. Pakistan responded with a swarm of drones and missiles targeting Indian cities along the Western Front. But India's multi-layered air defense network, powered by defense indigenous technology and advanced S-400 air defense systems, successfully intercepted the attacks. The operation also showcased the power of the air-launched BrahMos supersonic cruise missile, which emerged as a game-changer in modern precision warfare. Just 88 hours after the first strike, Pakistan's DGMO reached out to India seeking a ceasefire, marking the end of a 4-day conflict that reshaped South Asian security dynamics.
Operation is still going on means making preparations and the preparations that are going on. We have imbibed some lessons during Operation Sindhur, and because of those lessons, we thought that we need to make some changes. Therefore, the operation will remain in progress for as long as it is required.
Beyond the battlefield, Operation Sindhur also marked a diplomatic and strategic turning point.
By striking the terror hubs in the heart of Pakistan using long-range precision weapons, India effectively called the bluff on Pakistan's nuclear blackmail.
In the aftermath of the Pahalgam attack, India suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, making it clear that terror and cooperation cannot go hand in hand. Most major nations backed New Delhi's right to self-defense. On the anniversary of the operation today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi changed his social media display picture to a special Operation Sindhur emblem. 1 year later, the lessons of Operation Sindhur continue to shape India's military modernization. The armed forces are now focusing on next-generation indigenous air defense systems.
Struck and decimated their 9 terrorist camps on the 7th of May. Proof is there for everybody to see. The hard facts and the ground reality is that we struck 11 of their airfields. The ground reality is that we destroyed 13 of their aircraft, either on ground or in the air, including one high-value airborne asset at a record distance of 300 kilometers plus. We are also working on indigenous systems like Kusha, which you would be aware of, and our DRDO is working on that, and which we hope that it will be available to us in near future. As I said, the Honorable Prime Minister has already conveyed the direction for Sudarshan Chakra, so we are working towards that.
From the strikes on terror camps to the assertion of a new security doctrine, Operation Sindhur will always be remembered as a major example of India's precision strike capabilities. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
US President Donald Trump has repeatedly made tough remarks when it comes to Iran. But when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, did Saudi Arabia force Washington to back off from a key operation? According to an NBC News report citing two US officials, Trump was forced to pause a major US naval escort operation after Riyadh refused to cooperate. As per the report, Saudi Arabia used its control over critical airspace and military access to push back against a plan it believed could drag the Gulf deeper into a direct conflict with Iran. And according to the report, Gulf allies were caught off guard after Trump announced Project Freedom, the US mission designed to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The operation was set to begin on Monday, remember, but the Saudi leadership reportedly informed Washington that the US military aircraft would not be allowed to use the Prince Sultan Air Base or even cross Saudi airspace to carry out that escort mission. The NBC News report says Trump personally called the Saudi Crown Prince in an attempt to reverse the decision. But the effort allegedly failed. With access to key Saudi airspace blocked, the US president was basically reportedly left with little choice but to pause the operation in order to restore military access to the region. And the development is significant because Saudi Arabia, remember, had earlier allowed US aircraft to operate from the same Prince Sultan Air Base during Operation Epic Fury against Iran, before the current temporary US-Iran ceasefire came into effect. At the same time, questions have been growing over the actual scale of the damage caused by the Iranian strikes. A Washington Post report based on satellite image analysis claims that Iran hit far more US military assets than Washington had publicly admitted. And the report also says at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment were destroyed across US military sites in the region. The scale of the Iranian strikes, if true, is perhaps unlikely to inspire confidence and also raise questions over America's ability to actually defend Gulf allies in a crisis. Even as these reports surface, the US is waiting for Iran reportedly to respond to a new proposal aimed at ending the war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. According to Axios, Washington expects a response from Tehran within 48 hours. Iran says it is still reviewing the proposal, reportedly. The one-page draft agreement is reportedly set to include 14 points, including the gradual reopening of Hormuz, sanctions relief, limits on Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, the Iranian president has revealed details of his recent meeting with the supreme leader since he suffered severe injuries at the start of the US-Israeli war on Iran on the 28th of February. Listen to this.
I had the honor of meeting the dear leader. We spoke with him for nearly 2.5 hours. First of all, I should tell you that his views and the way he interacted were truly sincere and humble. For a leader to treat a person in such a manner, he genuinely had such a demeanor.
Shifting focus now to India after the assembly election results were declared in West Bengal. A chilling murder rocked the state. The personal assistant of BJP's Subhendu Adhikari was shot dead while returning from Kolkata to Madhyam Gram. His car was reportedly intercepted by a vehicle with a fake number plate, after which motorcycle-borne assailants fired 4 bullets at him. Buddhadev Bera, who was driving the car, also suffered bullet injuries and remains in a critical condition. An SIT headed by an Inspector General rank officer has been formed to probe the murder. Meanwhile, the mortal remains were brought home from the hospital to his residence. Adhikari, remember, who is a key CM contender as well, alleged that this was a pre-planned murder.
No matter how much we condemn the way this murder was carried out, it is not enough. He was killed because he was my aide and I defeated in Bhabanipur. This could be the reason for his murder. I stand with his family, and the family's demand is to apprehend those who committed this murder and ensure they are punished. The post-mortem revealed that 4 bullets were fired at him. This murder was premeditated.
And in another case of post-poll violence, a clash broke out between BJP and TMC workers in Howrah, resulting in one person getting injured. Subsequently, the police brought the situation under control. Now, it's important to note here that the BJP will be choosing its CM face on Friday, followed by a swearing-in ceremony on the 9th of May. However, TMC continues to be defiant with the Chief Minister, outgoing Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's refusal to resign. A few hours ago, the Samajwadi Party chief met the TMC leader at her residence in Kolkata to express solidarity. Thereafter, he accused the BJP and the Election Commission of committing what he called electoral fraud. Let's now also talk about what's happening down south in Tamil Nadu. The CM chair continues to elude Vijay for now. For the second day in a row, the actor turned politician called on the Tamil Nadu governor. However, the governor made it clear that Vijay has not been able to muster the required numbers essential for forming the government. While his party, the TVK, has 108 MLAs, remember, and has backed the support of 5 Congress legislators, he is still 5 short of the halfway mark there. And there was a twist in the tale earlier, with reports suggesting back-channel talks between arch rivals AIADMK and DMK to keep the TVK out of the government. However, outgoing Chief Minister M.K. Stalin quashed that speculation by indicating that the DMK would allow Vijay to form the government and run it without any disturbance for 6 months. Meanwhile, resort politics, as it's called, is back in full swing, while the TVK MLAs are already in Puducherry. Multiple AIADMK legislators were moved to a private resort as well. Although this also sparked speculation of a section of the AIADMK backing Vijay, the party eventually ruled out the possibility.
Due to the intense heat in Chennai, MLAs have said that they are staying in Puducherry. Around 40 MLAs are currently staying there. We will never support Vijay.
And amid all of this, all eyes are on the VCK, CPI and CPIM that have won 2 seats each. While they are yet to take a final call when it comes to supporting Vijay, all these parties urge the governor to invite him for government formation as leader of the single largest party. Interestingly, minority governments are not uncommon in India's history per se. What's important to note here is that they must prove majority on the floor of the House. This was also mentioned in the Supreme Court's judgment, S.R. Bomai judgment. In fact, what should the governor do then in case of a hung assembly is also the immediate question. The Punji Commission, set up to examine the relationship between the centre and the state governments, laid down the order of precedence to be followed for government formation. The first, the largest pre-poll alliance must be invited, and then preference should be given to the single largest party. Only after exhausting these possibilities, a post-poll coalition should be explored. However, past precedents of a hung assembly showing a variance in the approach of governors. For example, after the 2014 Maharashtra Assembly elections, the governor invited the BJP to form the government, despite it lacking a majority. But Devendra Fadnavis managed to pass the floor test via voice vote, with the NCP MLAs, remember, abstaining. In the year 2017, meanwhile, Goa witnessed a different situation. With the Congress not being invited despite winning the largest number of seats, the BJP, with its post-poll allies, was allowed to form the government and subsequently proved its majority. 2018, the BJP fell short of a majority in Karnataka, while the Congress and the JDU forged a post-poll alliance and crossed the majority mark in terms of the number of legislators. The governor did not accept their claim and instead invited the BJP to form the government. In the end, Yedurappa resigned without facing a floor test. Another episode of drama, in a way, evolved in Maharashtra. This was in the year 2019, while the president's rule was briefly imposed with no group yet to form the government. The state witnessed a sudden early morning swearing in of Fadnavis as chief minister and Ajit Pawar as the deputy CM, with the governor accepting the claim of NCP support. However, the government barely lasted 80 hours as most of the NCP legislators backed out. Meanwhile, Tamil Nadu Congress has called for massive protest demonstrations across district headquarters in the state on Friday, condemning the governor and the centre for allegedly acting against the constitution, they say. Switching gears for now, Russia and Ukraine are unrelenting. The two sides continuing to strike each other despite competing self-imposed ceasefires in the run-up to the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow. Moscow, meanwhile, has threatened Kiev's decision-making centers of retaliatory strikes, while Zelensky says the fate of Moscow's main parade now depends on Ukraine. The big question is whether Ukraine will actually defy Russia's ceasefire. Our next report getting you the complete story.
The war drums are growing louder. Missiles and drones are raining on both sides. Russia and Ukraine are hammering each other with relentless strikes despite competing ceasefires. Moscow has bombarded Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, in its latest assault. Ukrainian authorities claim Russian drone strikes lit up the skyline, leaving civilians scrambling for life. But Russia maintains it never targeted civilians or civilian-related infrastructure across Ukraine. Zelensky accuses Moscow of ignoring a proposed ceasefire while continuing large-scale strikes across Ukraine. He has issued a stern warning to Russia, saying Kyiv will respond fairly to Russia's ongoing attacks.
Україна буде діяти дзеркально. Залежно від ситуації вночі.
Ukraine will act in kind. Depending on the situation overnight and tomorrow, we will also determine our fully justified responses. Russia has received from us a clear proposal on silence of the guns and diplomacy and knows how to contact Ukraine or our partners in order to coordinate the details. If the one person in Moscow who cannot live without war cares only about one parade and nothing else, that's a different story.
Цікавить тільки один парад і більше нічого, то це інша справа.
Ukraine is striking back hard. Kyiv has reportedly launched a massive 347 drone blitz, targeting a military logistics hub near Moscow. This is one of the biggest aerial assaults by Ukraine in the last 4 years. The deep strikes by Ukraine inside Russia over the past few days has put Russian authorities on their toes. The Kremlin has intensified security as the country prepares to host the high-profile Victory Day celebrations, marking the anniversary of victory in World War II. Moscow has been fortified. Russian National Guard soldiers and armed Interior Ministry police have been deployed across key locations. Extra security measures have been put in place for Putin in case Ukraine carried out strikes on May 9th. Russia has scaled back celebrations this year. Tanks and missiles will not roll through the Red Square for the first time in almost 2 decades. A decision that has been taken after Ukraine launched drone attacks as far away as the Urals. Russia has drawn a fresh red line for Ukraine. Moscow has threatened Kyiv's decision-making centers of retaliatory attacks if Ukraine strikes Moscow during Victory Day celebrations.
The Russian Foreign Ministry strongly urges the authorities of your country, the leadership of your organization, to treat this statement with the utmost responsibility and to ensure the advance evacuation from the city of Kyiv of personnel of diplomatic and other missions, as well as citizens, in view of the inevitability of a retaliatory strike by the armed forces of the Russian Federation against Kyiv.
МИД России настоятельно призывает власти.
Zelensky is defiant. He has sent out a blunt message saying Russia's military parade depends on Ukraine. The Ukrainian president has accused Moscow of rejecting Kyiv's ceasefire proposal and continuing attacks across multiple regions. Ukraine and Russia have traded fire 1,820 times after Putin announced ceasefire on May 4th in the run-up to Victory Day. As the fighting rages on and deadlock over peace talks prevails, Ukraine's top negotiator is in Miami for a meeting with U.S. representatives. Victory Day is one of Russia's most symbolic national events, showcasing patriotic pride. Any disruption, any strike near Moscow could trigger a dangerous new escalation. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And before we go on any further, a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. As Donald Trump prepares to meet Xi Jinping later this month, a highly anticipated meeting, what can Washington expect from Beijing? We decode that shortly. That's coming up next. Are you tired of receiving spam calls? India ranks 5th globally among spam-affected nations. We get you the complete story with the numbers. Is it possible for a baby to be born twice and have 2 birthdays? It is being said that's exactly what happened with an infant in the United States. We tell you all about his extraordinary story. All this and more coming up. As US President Donald Trump prepares for that high-stakes meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month, the big question is, what exactly can Washington expect from Beijing? The upcoming meeting will be Trump's first visit to China, remember, in 8 years, and comes at a time when the world's 2 largest economies are trying to manage the deep trade, technology, and geopolitical tensions, even as they look for areas of possible cooperation. The 2 sides, in fact, appear to be working towards a broader trade understanding. On the surface, Washington wants Beijing to significantly boost purchases of American goods like soybeans, beef, poultry, even energy products, and Boeing aircraft, reportedly. One of the key proposals on the table is a possible Chinese commitment to buy 25 million metric tons of US soybeans annually for the next 3 years. And there are also reports of a massive Boeing deal under discussion for 500 Boeing 737 MAX jets, along with wide-body aircraft, also reportedly being discussed. This deal that has been stalled for years amid US-China strategic tensions. For Donald Trump, such agreements would offer a major economic and political win in a way ahead of the US midterm elections. But at the same time, China is expected to demand significant concessions in return. China wants the US to ease restrictions on advanced semiconductor exports and chip-making equipment, curbs, remember, that have become central to Washington's efforts to limit China's technological rise as well. At the same time, the US is pushing China to relax controls on rare earth exports and critical minerals. These materials are essential for American automotive, defense, and aerospace industries. But beyond trade, there is a much bigger strategic issue driving these talks. US sanctions on Chinese refiners accused of buying Iranian oil. Washington has recently sanctioned several Chinese refining companies as part of a broader campaign to cut off Iran's oil revenues. And the US has also warned Chinese banks that they could face secondary sanctions if they continue supporting transactions linked to Iranian crude. In fact, the US Treasury Secretary confirmed that letters were sent two Chinese banks, warning about the risks of dealing with sanctioned entities reportedly, and that appears to have triggered a careful balancing act in Beijing. China's Commerce Ministry publicly invoked its 2021 anti-sanctions law. It has notified Chinese companies to disregard certain US restrictions. Reports suggest China's financial regulator quietly asked major banks to halt fresh lending to some of the targeted refiners. And this contradiction from Beijing is significant. On one hand, you see, Beijing is projecting defiance against what it calls unjustified US sanctions. And on the other, it's clearly trying to protect its financial system and major companies from the threat of secondary sanctions that could disrupt their access to the global dollar-based economy. That's the bigger picture, and which is why many analysts believe the upcoming Trump-Xi talks may not just be about trade. For China, the priority could be to reduce pressure on its banks, refiners, technology sector, and for the United States, the aim is to secure economic concessions while maintaining strategic leverage over both China and Iran. So as Donald Trump heads to China, he is likely to find a Beijing that is willing to talk deals, but also one that is trying to navigate a growing sanctions battle with Washington, and that could make this one of the most important US-China meetings in years. China, meanwhile, has announced suspended death sentences for two of its former defense ministers. The move comes after China convicted them on corruption charges. This unprecedented move marking a severe escalation as President Xi Jinping's ongoing purge within the Chinese military continues. According to state media, former Chinese defense ministers Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu were both convicted of bribery, remember, and given the death penalty with a 2-year reprieve by the country's military court. A death sentence with reprieve in China is typically commuted to life imprisonment if the offender does not commit any crime during the period of reprieve. Wei served as defense minister from 2018 to 2023, whereas Shangfu succeeded Wei and held the position for less than 8 months in 2023. Both men were placed under investigation by the military's anti-graft arm in the year 2023. And China's Xi Jinping has taken his purge of the armed forces to the very top, meanwhile. Recently, a top general of the People's Liberation Army, remember, was removed. He was not only a Politburo member, but also was long seen as an ally of Xi Jinping. And the armed forces have been just one of the many targets of a broad corruption crackdown ordered by Xi Jinping after coming to power. In 2023, for example, the purges even reached the elite rocket force, which oversees nuclear weapons as well as conventional missiles. While Xi Jinping continues to prioritize the strengthening of the military through extensive purge, the dismissal of its top-ranking commanders also raises a crucial question. Is the crackdown really helping China build a modern military, or is it just creating gaps within its command center? Are you tired of receiving spam calls? Well, India has been ranked among the world's top 5 most spammed countries. According to a global report on spam and fraud calls, the country is being heavily targeted by sales, telemarketing, and scam calls. The report is based on data from Truecaller's more than 500 million global users, India ranking 5th on the global spam call volume, with Indonesia topping the list, followed by Chile, Vietnam, and Brazil. In 2025 alone, more than 68 billion spam and fraud calls were identified worldwide. India records a spam intensity of 66%, making it one of the most affected markets globally. In India, spam calls are mainly driven by commercial and fraud activity. Sales and telemarketing calls, meanwhile, account for 36%. Financial services make up 18%. And scams contribute 12%. Global patterns showing different sources of spam by region, including banking in Indonesia and Mexico and debt collection in Chile. Experts warn that rising spam is rapidly eroding trust in unknown calls as fraud and impersonation continue to rise. Truecaller reported saying it has now over 500 million monthly active users and is focusing on preventing fraud before it reaches users. Cyber experts, meanwhile, say users can reduce risks by using caller ID and spam filter apps, not sharing personal or bank details over unknown calls, and reporting suspicious numbers to help block future fraud attempts as well. Cyber experts estimating and industry trackers also, according to the estimates by cyber experts and industry trackers, Indians lose thousands of crores annually to phone-based fraud and scam calls, making it one of the fastest growing financial crime channels in the country. Over a month ago, a court verdict in the US took the tech giants by a storm. It held Meta and Google accountable for designing social media platforms that are harmful to young people and fined them with a cumulative sum of $6 million. Meta has now challenged this verdict. Our next report telling you more.
The global debate around social media addiction took a fresh turn as Meta asked a Los Angeles court to overturn its March verdict, holding the tech giant liable for the depression of a 19-year-old woman. In the alternative, it sought a new trial. Meta argued that it was shielded from the claims made by the teen, owing to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. This 1996 federal law exempts online platforms from legal liability for the materials their users post. Meta also asserted that evidence presented at the trial tied the woman's mental health challenges to the content she viewed, rather than design features like autoplay and infinite scroll. Meanwhile, Google also said that it had plans to appeal against the verdict. This case dates back to January this year when 19-year-old Kaylee filed a lawsuit against Meta, TikTok, Google, and Snap. She claimed to have been addicted to these companies' platforms at a young age because of their attention-grabbing design. The petitioner demanded accountability as she has blamed these tech giants for fueling her depression and suicidal thoughts. Subsequently, Snap and TikTok reached an out-of-court settlement with the petitioner. Court's ruling found Meta and Google of being negligent in designing addictive products. According to the judges, both tech companies failed to provide adequate warnings about potential danger of their products. Meta and Google were ordered to pay Kaylee $4.2 and $1.8 million respectively. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg himself testified in this matter. While he sidestepped the question on whether Instagram is addictive, he made one big admission that should matter to every social media user. After being presented internal documents, he revealed that Meta previously set a goal to increase the amount of time people spent on Instagram but gradually moved away from this approach. This raises some key questions. Can content and the platform be separated? Why are tech giants not able to use AI effectively to ensure that digital safety and age-based access remains sacrosanct? This assumes significance at a time when the world is grappling with the menace of social media addiction. According to the Digital 2026 report by the Data Reportal portal, an average TikTok user spends 1 hour and 37 minutes on the app every single day. YouTube users aren't far behind at 1 hour and 25 minutes. Instagram comes in at 1 hour and 13 minutes and Facebook at just over an hour. Now, Meta's appeal is being closely followed as it can have implications on thousands of similar cases filed against Meta, Google, and other social media firms by individuals, families, as well as states.
Is masculine behavior bad for the planet? Why is this question even being asked? A global study is raising questions over climate change and the role that gender plays. Over 20 scientists from 13 countries say certain masculine lifestyles are accelerating environmental damage faster than many people realize. Our next report telling you more.
A new international research paper has linked masculine behavior patterns with higher environmental damage and larger carbon footprints. The study, published in the journal Norma, International Journal for Masculinity Studies, examined climate politics, industrial practices, food habits, and social attitudes across several countries. Researchers reviewed existing studies on global warming, pollution, and environmental collapse. According to their findings, men on average consume more carbon-intensive products and services, especially when it comes to transportation, tourism, and meat consumption. The global report also claims that men show lower levels of concern about climate change and are generally less active in environmental politics. Researchers say many men resist changing everyday habits, even as climate warnings grow more urgent. A 2025 study from France involving 15,000 participants found that men produced 26% more emissions than women through food and travel habits alone. Another study published last year in the Journal of Environmental Psychology linked masculinity stress with climate denial and resistance to eco-friendly choices. Researchers found that some men avoid sustainable products because they fear appearing less masculine. The global paper also highlights the dominance of men in high-pollution sectors such as heavy industry, industrial agriculture, extraction-based businesses, and militarism. One of the editors of the paper says there is now significant evidence showing the environmental impact of certain male behaviors. Researchers clarified that the problem does not apply equally to all men, adding that wealthy elite men in industrialized Western societies contribute far more to environmental damage than low-income populations in the global South. Bureau Report, World is One.
The president-elect of the Oxford Union has been removed from office after an election tribunal found her guilty of electoral fraud, reportedly, during the student body's recent polls, according to a report by The Telegraph. The postgraduate student was disqualified after the union's tribunal concluded that she had distributed Oxford Union membership cards to individuals who were not eligible to vote, allegedly. During the proceedings, she was accused of handing out a stack of membership cards on polling day to people who were not entitled to vote, allegedly. She instructed them, reportedly, to cast ballots using the identities of other members, allegedly. The alleged irregularities were first flagged on the 6th of March when several students were reportedly caught voting using other members' identification details. In fact, following the tribunal's verdict, the Oxford Union has announced a re-poll for the president's position, which is scheduled to take place on coming Monday. She had been elected to the role in March. In her election manifesto, she had promised a new access membership fund. Procedural reforms to Thursday debates and greater representation of female speakers at the union, reportedly. Responding to the decision, she has told The Telegraph reportedly that she plans to appeal against the ruling. She also claimed that she had been subjected to racism and harassment, allegedly, during the controversy. Is it possible for a baby to be born twice? Can you have two birthdays in a year? Yes, they sound like strange questions, but that's exactly what's happened in the United States. It's an extraordinary, heartwarming story. It can be said that the Florida infant was born twice because he underwent a surgery that involved a partial delivery weeks before his mother gave birth to him. Let's tell you more about what really happened. 19 weeks into her pregnancy came grim news. Doctors discovered the baby had congenital high airway obstruction syndrome. This is basically a condition which involves a thick membrane impeding a fetus's airway. It's often deadly because it causes fluid to become trapped in a fetus's lungs. A surgery was then performed that involved a partial delivery. The baby was then placed back in the mother's uterus. The procedure was performed when she was 25 weeks pregnant. In fact, the mother has reportedly said her son would mark his first year of life with 2 birthdays. One on the anniversary of that surgery that saved his life, and then on the day of the actual birth. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Kampir, signing off. Thanks for watching.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat. into darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One. WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America,